They're excited. Welcome to Monster Mania.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So how's your con been so far? Your Monster Mania convention?
Well, a lot of Predator sightings, you know. A lot of Predator, a lot of Lethal Weapon, some Saw, you know. But it's been great. It's been great. It's been fun.
It's I want to start out by just asking, like, since you have had such a indelible mark on cinema, you personally, what's like the very first movie that you remember seeing, and kind of talk to us about the experience of seeing that movie?
I think the very first movie that I remember seeing was Lena Horne in Stormy Weather, and Catherine Dunham was the dancer in there, and I remembered her because she looked extraordinarily gorgeous, besides Lena Horne. And then probably, I think the movie that I remember most was probably when I was about 9 years old, when I saw Harry Belafonte and Carmen Jones. Mm-hmm. It was at the drive-in, I remember. And that was another movie that had a major impact on me. You know? Yeah.
Were those the movies that made you want to become an actor yourself, become a performer?
No, I don't, you know, I came through acting really at a moment in time. The first time that I'd ever stepped on stage, I was like 20 years old, and it was 1967, it was out of a movement around black art in the late 60s, and that's really got me involved in acting, and for the first time when I was a student. And then from there, when I came back to acting as a profession, it mainly came through theater and through the work of the great South African playwright Ethel Fugard. That really was the course of the roadmap for me to become an actor, because I had three things were important to me. One, that I had to feel that what I was doing was important, mm-hmm. And define what was important for me in the world. And the other part is that I learned the craft of acting, and so the work of Fugard, F-U-G-A-R-D, Fugard, is really, without Fugard, I don't think I'm an actor, without coming to his work. And it put me right smack in the middle of all the discussions around the anti-apartheid movement. So the work itself was an extension of what I thought and what I felt politically. And so that was important for me at the early stages, you know, to lay that kind of groundwork, framework. So that's how I got into it. Then I was on Broadway doing a play by Fugard in 1982, and Robert Benton saw me in the play and hired me for Moles in Places in the Heart. And that was my first major role.
Okay. So I do want to open it up to questions. I'm going to ask you guys keep it to one question per person and keep it nice and short. And you, sir, right there at the end. Let's open with you.
First of all, I just want to say that Sergeant Murtaugh is totally badass. I love every Lethal Weapon. I really just want to ask a question about like the fight scenes in Part 4 with Jet Li. You just discuss a little bit about that. Was it, like, how many takes did it take, and like, you know, just was it like choreographed, and how your experience that?
How what?
Your experience fighting Jet Li, you know, with.
Oh, I mean, it was great, man. It was so funny because we had never seen, you know, all the fight scenes we had done and the things we had done in the 3 previous Lethal Weapons we had never seen anybody as fast as Jet Li. And Jet Li, I think, was then about 35 years old, and they said he was even faster. He used to be faster than he was, and we almost find that incomprehensible, you know. But it was really a great deal, you know, a great deal of fun, man, and really all the underwater stuff. That was the beauty of it, because we didn't go out to St. Pedro in the cold of the night and shot that. They built, they were able to replicate the skyline at night, and they built a huge tank on the stage, one of the sets on the stages, and then we did all the underwater scene. It must have been about 12 feet under, 12 feet down, about deep rather, and so we did all the underwater stuff at, you know, from 6 a.m. To 6 p.m. on the stage, or 7 to 7 on the stage, you know, instead of being out in the cold of San Pedro at night, you know. So, but it was great. The whole thing was really wonderful, you know.
Let's take another question. Yes, sir, in the row there. Yeah.
What was it like working with Gary Busey?
Gotta have a Busey question.
I had the pleasure of working with Gary, man. You know, I mean, you know, Gary Busey was infamous then, you know, for all his antics, you know, but I tell you, it was really wonderful. You know, Dick Donner has a way of bringing people and casting people in such a way that it's really, who would have thought about bringing Joe Pesci in, you know what I'm saying? And eventually Chris Rock, you know. But Gary was something really, it was really something real special. Then I had the opportunity to work with him also in Predator 2, you know, which is, I'm so glad that people have shown at my festivals that I've been, this is only the fourth one, fifth one I've done, that they've shown some love for Predator 2, man. Because it's funny because I didn't, it kind of went, you know, it's one of those movies you do. And I remember when my agent said, hey man, before you answer, because you start doing stuff like The Color Purple and Lethal Weapon, and I had been offered a role in the first Predator, but it was a role that Carl Weathers eventually did. But I had just finished The Color Purple, and there's a scene where he's very brutal to this woman. I said, I cannot do another movie right now hitting a woman, man. People will outlaw me. You know, I was like I was already getting, I was in Chicago doing a play in 1986, and man, I was getting drugged under the bus, you know, for Mister and all that. But it was great. It was a great discourse and a great discussion. But I turned down the first Predator, and it came to me with the first Lethal Weapon. So I had an opportunity to do the second Predator, which was really fun, and I had a great time. That was, you know, that was one of my really special moments. Cause I did a lot. I worked out and trained like I was training for, you know, opening day, you know, for the NFL. You know, I was training all over the place, running the beach, doing weightlifting, which I had never done, but everything else has been great. But Busey was wonderful working with him on that. Everyone was, from Ruben Blades and everyone, you know. Bill Paxton was on it. It's a great cast. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, having done so many rich drama and theatrical roles, what was the appeal, or what made you want to kind of start doing action stuff?
Well, I think ultimately, that's always the question now. Sometimes you'll see actors doing graphic novel movies, you know, Mark Ruffalo playing Hulk in What You Come. You say, Mark Ruffalo is such a fine dramatic actor, you know, or it's where, you know, I think the first one was Lethal Weapon, which my career started with Places in the Heart, Witness, Silverado, and then Color Purple. And then Lethal Weapon was a vehicle that they were going to do at Warner Brothers. And basically, because I had done Color Purple, and it was a Warner Brothers film, so I was on the kind of list, the approval list. And so that's how that happened. And so it came out of that really interesting because it was more than when I read the script. It was written by Shane Black, the first one. And, you know, already, you know, Dick Donner was a legendary director with Superman. And it came out of that, and when I read it, it was the humor in it, it was the family in it, it was the action, and it was all of them. It's a combination of all those things that I think were really, that attracted me to it, you know? And it did 70 million domestically, the first one, and then it just blew off, you know, off the radar screen with then we talk about the VHS, was it? The videos, you know, we don't even talking about anything but video. We weren't talking about CDs and anything like that, DVDs rather. And so it made the other one possible because the other one did so well, you know. And so you don't get those things, but I think a part of the a part of the film industry is about action films, or, as we know, graphic novels. We didn't have that many graphic novels, maybe the first Batman, graphic novels, and comedies, you know. So you end up doing that wherever you are in the process, you know. Either going that way in some sort of direction. You know, rarely, if you can count only a very few actors that are actresses that really make their money just doing dramatic work. Yeah.
Let's take a picture or a question from over here. All right, in the back. Yes, sir.
Do you ever get nervous when you sit on the toilet?
Do you get nervous when you sit on the toilet? I can't believe I just had to repeat that question. It's a first for the day.
Well, I signed one toilet and one event.
A full-size toilet?
No, it was the tank. Somebody brought the tank. You know, they didn't bring just the top. They brought the whole tank inside the tank. You know, they didn't have the bottom portion. That would have been suspect. Yeah.
Do you think they went back home and reinstalled that in their home? Like somewhere there is.
It was great. I remember a friend of mine was running for mayor of San Francisco, Art Agnos, and I went to a benefit at his home, and he introduced me by saying, you know, right over here, Mother Teresa sat in that chair over there. Right over here, Stonewall sat in over that space, and on that couch. And all I want Danny Glover to do is sit on my toilet. That will clean up everything. that would you know. So.
From Mother Teresa to you sitting on the toilet. Let's take one from this side of the room. Yes, sir. Yeah, against the wall. Yeah.
Would it be at all possible to call Mel right now?
To call Mel? I don't think we're breaking out the cell phone to call Mel.
Don't do that, man.
But all right. So okay, yes, sir. In the Ghostbuster shirt.
How was it working with the ensemble cast on Royal Tenenbaums?
Oh man, that was great, man. That was really great. It's a great story. It's a great story about that. You know, because Wes Anderson wanted me to do it, and so I said, Wes, there's not that very much. It's not that much for me to do in the film. He said, I'll write you something. I'll write you something. I said, okay. So, and every time I would come to New York, Wes lived in New York. Every time we come to New York, Wes would say, what are you doing, man? I'm gonna go hang out with you. I said, okay, Wes. So he went to an opening of a film at the New York Film Festival that I did with Angela Bassett called Bozeman and Liena, a South African film. And we did that, and he said, and I told a story about how the director had approached me in the airport in Paris at about 5 in the morning, waiting for me. He was like 82 years old, waiting for me. And I had the meeting, and I listened to his vision, and I said, and I had already been dodging him. And then I said, he said something in his vision that made me say, okay, I'll see you in Cape Town. And so I went and told my agent, and Wes said, you're gonna do the same thing, okay, with him, with Royal Tenenbaum. Because I think I had been offered something else before then, and I had the choice of doing one of the two. So then because I'm a Goodwill ambassador for the UN, and at the time when Kofi Annan was the Secretary General, I did a lot of different work around the UN, UNDP, the issue around HIV/AIDS and stuff. And so I took him to an event where, you know, Mark Malloy Brown, who was the head of the UNDP, and all these various prestigious people were going to be there. And I introduced him to Kofi Annan, and introduced him. Then after Kofi Annan, after he left, and Kofi Annan went to another part of the room, he said, man, that's the look I want for you in the film. With the goatee and the white hair. So it's all inspired by Kofi Annan's look and I said to myself, this guy, if I take him to introduce him at that time, the Secretary General, one of the most important men in the world, and all he can say is that that's the look I want you. I said, let me do this guy's film, you know what I'm saying? So, but it was a great. And I was always told Angelica Houston had a major crush on her anyway, so. A major crush on her, so it was all right. All right?
Yes, ma'am, in the pink shirt.
How was it to work with Coppola instead of the Rainmaker? And did he do any like interesting like acting?
I'm sorry?
How was it to work with Coppola on the set of the Rainmaker? And did he do any like interesting like acting methods with you to get a performance out of you?
How was it working with Coppola and on the Rainmaker? And did he do any interesting acting methods with you?
Not really, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. Sometimes I have a very difficult time with exposition, you know, and I'm the judge, and all he does is make these kind of pronouncements and stuff like that. And so, with me, exposition is, I have to kind of like work on it, you know, days and days before I actually shoot it, because it's something that essentially detached. For me, if we're doing a general conversation between us, then it's cool. But if I'm doing just exposition, it throws me off. And historically, it's done that for me a great deal. Like when I did Grand Canyon, there was about like literally 4 pages of me just talking, 3 or 4 pages of me just talking about going down to the Grand Canyon, going down the Cayaba Trail, and then coming back up 7.5 miles to the Bright Angel Trail and everything else. So I actually went and did that. I actually went down the Grand Canyon, walked 4 miles down, stayed 2 nights, then walked up. So it was real for me. It had something. It wasn't just words that I was pronouncing, words that I was speaking. It was real to me, and so I tried to. It was really. It wasn't a difficult film to do, but it was really challenging for me working with him because of the fact that it was so much, the judge is so much exposition, you know. I mean, so, but it was great. But there wasn't anything that Coppola did that I noticed, you know.
Yes, ma'am, in the green shirt. Or, yeah, yes. Green, blue, I don't know, I can't tell, but you, well, I'm talking to you, yeah. A favorite genre and or favorite movie that you've done?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, I think the movie that, for me, there will always be the one that stands out for me is Places in the Heart with Sally Fields, and primarily because my work in that movie is dedicated to my mother, who died in an automobile accident on the very day that I received the information that I was going to get the movie. So I had an opportunity. Rarely does an artist have an opportunity to really dedicate something specific to someone they love, as I was enormously in love with my mom. And so I got an opportunity to do that. And the other stuff behind that, you know, I think April of 1983, I was with my mom and dad, and we were going somewhere. And my mom said that I was going to do a movie in September of '83 that was going to change my life and change my career, and it was going to be about me. So when I read the script, it wasn't about me, but if your parents came from some sort of rural background, or your mother or someone, and they would always send you down. So even though I was born and raised in San Francisco, I spent so much time with my grandparents who were poor farmers, in rural Georgia. My grandmother was a midwife, you know, and so I spent so much time with them. People never really believed that I was from San Francisco because I had this funny weird mannerism of someone who was born in the South, you know, and so for me it was about me and the images that I had about my grandfather. You know, Mo's represent about the same age as my grandfather during the Depression and stuff. My grandfather was born in 1891, you know, 1892, and he was around 40 years old at the time, early 40s during the Depression. So I kind of use him as my grounding